All right, so you wanted the deep dive on Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. Buckle up, because we're going way deeper than just like the surface level on this one. This wasn't just a spectacle. It was a clash of styles. It was a study in strategy. And honestly, the numbers tell a fascinating story.
Yeah, the amount of attention this fight got was remarkable. It really does speak to, I think, that age-old fascination with seeing like a young challenger taking on a legend. It's a narrative that resonates across so many sports and eras, I think.
Exactly. And just picture this. 72,300 people packed into AT&T Stadium. The energy is crackling with anticipation. You've got in one corner 27-year-old Jake Paul, the social media star turned boxer, with a hunger to prove himself. And then in the other, the one and only Mike Tyson, 58 years old, stepping back into the ring after almost 2 decades. Now that's drama.
Yeah, it really set the stage for an intriguing matchup. You had the raw power and the experience of Tyson, a fighter who defined an era against the youth and the evolving skill set of Paul. So it was a true test of whether like classic boxing could stand up to this more modern, agile approach.
And speaking of tests, let's look at how those expectations played out in the ring. Paul ultimately won by unanimous decision, but those judges' scores 80-72, 79-73, and 79-73. Don't tell the whole story.
No, you're right. The numbers alone can be deceiving. While Paul certainly controlled the fight, landing 78 out of 278 punches, compared to Tyson's 18 out of 97. There were moments where Tyson's power and experience truly shone through.
Oh, absolutely. There's a reason they call him Iron Mike.
Yeah.
Even at 58, he took those punches like a champ, showing that legendary resilience.
Yeah.
There was one moment in particular, I think it was round 4, where Tyson landed a left hook that had the entire crowd on their feet.
Yeah, that moment really encapsulates the essence of this fight. You had Paul strategically picking his shots, using his agility and reach to keep Tyson at bay. But then, boom, Tyson would explode with that familiar power, reminding everyone why he is considered one of the greats.
And it wasn't just a one-off. There were several times where Tyson's punches, even though they landed less frequently, seemed to carry a lot more weight.
It speaks to the difference in their styles. Paul was all about accuracy and control, racking up points with his jab, and calculated combinations. Tyson, on the other hand, was looking for that one devastating blow, relying on that power that made him a knockout artist in his prime.
Okay, so we've got the tail of the tape, the judges' scores, and those flashes of classic Tyson power. But beyond that, what really stood out to you about the fight?
For me, it was the way both fighters adapted their strategies. Throughout the 8 rounds, it became this fascinating chess match, with each fighter trying to anticipate and counter the other's moves. So in the early rounds, you could really see Tyson trying to establish his classic style. You know, he was pushing forward, looking for those close-range exchanges where he could unleash that power. It was like he was trying to turn back the clock and fight the way that made him a legend.
Right, like going for that knockout punch early on, trying to just overwhelm Paul with that signature aggression. But Paul, he seemed ready for it. Instead of engaging in a brawl, he used his jab to keep Tyson at a distance, almost like he was studying Tyson's movements, waiting for the right moment to strike back.
Yeah, that's exactly what impressed me about Paul's performance. He didn't fall into the trap of trying to match Tyson's power. Instead, he fought a really smart and strategic fight. That consistent jab to Tyson's chest wasn't just about scoring points. It was about disrupting Tyson's rhythm, preventing him from setting up those power punches.
It's like he was saying, I'm not going to play your game, Mike. I'm going to dictate the pace and fight on my terms. And as the fight went on, we saw both fighters making adjustments. Tyson started incorporating more body shots, trying to slow Paul down, wear him out.
Yeah, that was a smart move by Tyson. You know, he realized those headshots weren't connecting consistently. So he shifted his focus to Paul's body. Body shots are a classic tactic. Against a more agile opponent, sap your energy, slow you down, potentially open up those opportunities for headshots later in the fight.
And it wasn't just the body shots. Tyson was mixing up his combinations, trying to cut off the ring, trap Paul against the ropes. You could feel the intensity building in those middle rounds.
But Paul, he stayed composed. Instead of panicking, he started incorporating more movement, using those feints, those little deceptive movements that mimic punches, to keep Tyson guessing, make him hesitate just for a split second, give Paul the advantage in the exchange.
Yeah, it was fascinating to watch how he would slip just out of range of Tyson's punches, using his footwork to create space. He wasn't just reacting, he was anticipating Tyson's moves.
And that's where I think his youth and training really showed. He had the stamina to keep moving, to stay elusive, while Tyson, even with all his experience, was starting to show signs of fatigue. You could see it in those later rounds. Punches didn't have that same snap, that same explosiveness.
Okay, so we talked about the jab, The body shots,
Yeah.
the feints. But there was another tactic that Paul used that I found really interesting, the clinch. Whenever Tyson would get too close, Paul would tie him up, preventing those clean shots from landing. Was that part of his strategy? Or was he just trying to buy himself some time?
Oh, it was definitely a strategic move. The clinch is a great way to disrupt an opponent's rhythm, especially an opponent like Tyson, who relies on those close-range bursts of power. By clinching, Paul was essentially neutralizing Tyson's biggest weapon, preventing him from building up that momentum.
And you could see it working. By the final rounds, Tyson was visibly tired, while Paul still looked relatively fresh. It was like he had paced himself perfectly, knowing that Tyson's energy would fade as the fight went on.
That's the thing about boxing. It's not just about physical strength and power. It's about stamina. It's about strategy. It's about knowing how to manage your energy over the course of the fight. And Paul, despite his relative inexperience, showed a remarkable understanding of those nuances.
Yeah, it really was a masterclass in adaptability, wasn't it? He took what Tyson was giving him, adjusted his strategy accordingly, and ultimately that's what won him the fight.
Precisely. He didn't let Tyson dictate the terms of engagement. He used his agility and boxing IQ to control the distance, the pace, the flow of the fight.
Now, we can't talk about this fight without mentioning that respectful embrace at the end after all the pre-fight hype, the trash talk, the face-offs, to see Paul and Tyson hug out. It really spoke volumes.
It was a great moment of sportsmanship. It showed that beneath all the rivalry, there was a mutual respect between these two fighters. And I think it also helped to solidify the narrative of this fight as a passing of the torch, a symbolic transition from one generation of boxing to the next.
Yeah, it definitely added another layer to the whole experience, reminding us that at the end of the day, it's just a sport.
And this fight transcended the sport itself. It generated conversations about age in boxing, about the role of social media fame in the sport, even about what defines a real boxer.
Yeah, it challenged a lot of preconceived notions and forced people to reevaluate their expectations. No one knew for sure how this fight would play out, and I think that's what made it so captivating.
Exactly. It was a story of legacy, of reinvention, and the enduring power of iconic figures, and it left us with more questions than answers. Where does boxing go from here? What does this mean for the future of both these fighters?
Well, it definitely sparked a lot of debate and discussion. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to turn it over to you, the listener. What are your thoughts on this fight? How do you see the roles of legacy and reinvention playing out in the future of boxing? This fight opened up a whole new chapter in the sport, and it'll be fascinating to see where it leads the position.